Well, why do you think that the games press wrote the gamers are dead articles? Why did they write them all and publish them on the same day?
Well, I definitely know there was collusion. That was proven straight up. Other journalists proved it. Um, and then other journalists also verified it because flip side of the journalists who just copy each other, these journalists were like, I'm gonna disprove, fucking Milo Yiannopoulos. Like, seems like an easy ballpark, right? um, they did conclusively show, yeah, they literally discussed doing that all at once. I think
Well,
they
no,
were
they
very
to
upset.
be clear, if we're gonna, they did not say that they were. Yes, there was the Game Journal Pros list with almost 150
Yeah.
games journals on it, and they did
Now, not
collude to
every single
blacklist
journalist.
people, and they did
Yeah.
collude to blacklist game developers and games journalists from the industry. But we do not have
Yep.
specific proof of the specific accusation that they were planning these specific articles. Though of course there could be other groups, who knows, right? But like
Yeah.
we don't have the receipts on that specific claim, right?
Okay. So I think part of it was also, like I said, the censorship thing. Pretty sure we, well, I don't know, too long ago. And so they'd all been working on the censorship angle of their own websites. So, like Kotaku specifically was banning all talk of certain material. They also were getting fed up, and I think they were planning, at least that's the impression I get. Mm, I had some shit saved, and I don't have it now, of course. But they were definitely planning a sort of like reveal at one of the conventions of like the new label of gamers, and it was extremely 1984. And I do think Gamergate fucked them up. They did. I heard some straight up developers and some journalists say like, yeah, we cannot push that through now. Like that is not happening.
Wait, what is it that they were
Because of
trying to push through that was stopped in your eyes?
either it was like it wasn't quite a relabeling of gamers, but it was gonna be on the sort of I remember we were mocking it as being Gamers Plus because the atheists had their Atheist Plus. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
I am, yeah.
Okay. Now I'm not. I'm Catholic and I've been Catholic since I had my whole like I had an 8-year journey of like, no, I'm atheist. I'm super skeptical. And it took me like 8 years, and I was just like, you know what, fuck it, I'm Catholic, even though I'm like have so many issues with the church and everything else. But yeah, I'm not super familiar with the skepticism community or Atheist Plus or anything like that, which amazes me. I got on their block bot somehow, but in general, they were talking about having a Gamers Plus. Now that was the joke. The actual thing I think they were just trying to push was a relabeling of like almost like the whales. Like I'm calling it whales because that's the term we've been using from gambling to describe people who spend on mobile games. Now, I have some things saved and I have like a pretty good photographic memory, so I have like images saved, like macro images, but I can't remember 100% the words because it's been a decade. Now, if I can remember, it was about, like I said, the whales. So they were just gonna try and like relabel what gamers are into sort of more of like a the real gamers aren't, toxic, harassing, misogynist, blah blah blah. And they were just gonna try and relabel as like the real gamers are the ones who spend money on Candy Crush and uh they weren't gonna use gambling back then because that was actually like while it was still like people did not really use like slots on the phone games yet as much. Like I mean, slots have been on phone games since phone games,
Right.
but It
Okay.
wasn't considered like, yeah.
Yeah, that's sorry. I'm not trying to be rude and cut you off. It's just we.
No, 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 yeah,
I'm
like
worried
I
we're
don't
not gonna.
remember
I'm
enough
worried
to help you,
I'm
but
worried we're gonna go till like
running out of
11 o'clock,
time.
and it's gonna be like, oh no, we still have like 30 questions left.
Yeah.
Yeah, it
And
is a.
I don't remember clearly enough anyway, so
But I mean, no, this is your story. This is your, obviously, this was a huge part of your life for a long time, and like that's something that,
yes.
and you have a very unique perspective. Like I wanted to interview you too, es- uh, because, well, part of the reason I think this is going to be such an interesting interview, potentially, um, and I'm not sure it has been as much as I'd like so far yet, but you seem to have a very unique perspective on the people who opposed Gamergate. Some of them in
Yes.
particular. Do you want to talk about like what do you think that the anti-Gamergate people did to Gamergate people, and what should happen?
Well, so I did. I had some people try and get me uh removed from a volunteer position where I wasn't like in a big position of authority or anything. It was just a volunteer position, but they very much did not want me to be in it as anything other than like I could use it, I could be in part of it, but I shouldn't have like any. What? I, it's incorrect to even say authority or like a face in it because it wasn't even that much, but it was like even that much was too much for them. They were very much like you have to remove her. She cannot be involved in Gamergate and like in tangentially related to this, it brings down your reputation and everybody else's work who's involved in this. And I found that a little mind blowing. I still do. I still have people to this day who will not talk to me or want anything to do with me in anything because they're just like, I have friends who were hurt by Gamergate. And I'm like, you have friends in Gamergate? Like, what are you talking about? Because, like, in general, I think Gamergate mostly went after its own the worst. Now that's my personal perspective, but I do, yeah, like there were people who were harassed, yes, but also as like one of the women of Gamergate, I also had to like use my actual real life picture a lot and be like, yeah, there's a reason I want to keep big titty girls in video games. It makes me feel better about myself. Like, because I have very big boobs, and have since middle school. And yeah, in general, it was just like I had good experiences in Gamergate. I understand if other people didn't, but I also, one of the reasons I kept trying to point out, I was like, on the side of defending the label of gamer is as with Andre Dworkin, I don't believe that all men are responsible for the actions of rapist men, to be clear. And if you're harassed by a woman, you shouldn't also be like, all women are abusive monsters, period. End of discussion. Now, again, this goes different from like the Charlottesville riot, like if you're in a crowd of people and they're chanting Jews will not replace us while copying the torch functions of the Hitler, Nazis, you're not a good person if you stay there. That's where you got to draw the line. And I also would try to draw the line with Gamergate. I don't know any harassment, but most people were smart enough not to do it specifically in front of me where I could see it because they obviously know I'm not down for that. I came in here looking for them to fight them. So,
Well,
but yes, that's what I came through.
you talked about seeing yourself represented. Do you think that representation in games or other media is important?
Yes, but with a caveat. So, for instance, my favorite Disney character is Tiana. Now, the character I recognize myself in the most is also Tiana because she was a workaholic and she's kind of like an INTJ type, which I am. I was very hardcore workaholic, and like my brother will constantly have to remind me, work smarter, not harder, because at one point when she says in The Princess and the Frog, she's like, she comes to the realization she can't finish her dream just by working really hard. But instead of being like, so the solution is to get help, she's like, that means I just have to work even harder. And I'm like, yeah, that's me. So I get that. And so while a lot of African Americans more represent them, like see the representation because they too are African American, with me as a Native American, I'm very anti Pocahontas because she was freaking 12. Like, there was no romance with John Smith. That's not a thing. It didn't happen. Um, but I see myself in Tiana because of the character. Now, for instance, my favorite Assassin's Creed is also the third, but it's not the third you're thinking, which is the one with the Native Americans. No, my favorite is the third, again, with the African American girl. I'm like, she's awesome! And I love that game so much. And it's only on like PS Vita, or it was. I think it's on computer now too. But I've played it like 5 times. I'm like, yes, yes. So I think in that respect, yes, representation is important. But I think also, so there were a lot of shit. What's the name of the organization? It's a nonprofit, but they analyze games from a cultural standpoint. Very
Digra?
academic. Mm-mm.
Digra? It wasn't Digra?
Oh yeah, you're right, Digra. I was thinking GSA or something like that,
Oh,
but
the IGDA. That was the Game Developers Association.
that's different. No,
Yeah. But yeah,
different one entirely.
Digra
But
was
Digra.
a their perception that people had was that they were like a more social justicey academic group that researched
They're not
games.
they're not bad. I think,
Or well,
but
hang on,
there
I'm not
was
sure if they actually are or not. Haven't like looked into it super much, but
yeah. I think there was one other because I was helping dig through like mounds of just papers about video games. And I actually had some very interesting discussions because an academic look at video games is surreal, I gotta tell you, but it was very interesting to me. Um, but one of the things they would constantly argue is like, okay, so you have the Uncle Tom's Cabin thing, where Uncle Tom's Cabin actually created a lot of sympathy in the North for slaves. And they were like, you're right. This is absolutely an abomination. We should not have slavery. We need to help our Southern family, brothers and sisters. All of us are, God's children and we should help them and so forth. And one of the things that was actually discovered is you don't have that as much in video games as you do in books and movies and plays. So even like going back to like, Oedipus Rex and Greek plays, you would still get more sort of activism out of people by charging their emotions than you do with video games. And this comes from the fact that one, you're when you try to have like a first person avatar insert, like Baldur's Gate, you have your character name and they are your player character and it's like your self insert almost. They're not really you. And I think sometimes like people over assume that just because you make the main character an avatar, you can empathize better with them as the person who's behind them and playing them. I don't think that's the case at all. I personally, this is one of the reasons I role play. So I got into role play before Gamergate, long before, because I'm very bad at writing characters in books and plays, which is something I've been trying to work on since high school because I used to have a more Shakespeare style where they were kind of like the actor could insert themselves and I would be pretty hands off about it. And I came to realize that's not great. I wanted more of a One Piece kind of thing. I love the characters in the anime One Piece. Now it's got the Netflix live action, which everybody loves. Um, the characterization is phenomenal, and I love like Rumiko Takahashi's characters. She did Inuyasha, Ranma 1/2, and I started really realizing this is my weakness. I need to work on this and make better characters. So that's why I started RPing. And in video games, yes, I love the side characters. So like Minsc in Baldur's Gate, you know, everybody loves Minsc. How can you not love Minsc? Imoen, same. I even like Jaheira. She's kind of, I don't know, mixed bag. Like my dad can't stand her because he would have to like go into the game hacks and like change her into like neutral good because he's just very very stubborn and would only like run a neutral good game. Like refuse to do like evil or neutral runs, and if you do it, if you're too good in the original, Jaheira, who is a druid and like true neutralish, will get very annoyed. So he hated all her lines about like being annoyed, and he loved it when he changed her alignment because then she was all like proud of him and would praise him. Funny as shit. But anyway, so when it comes to video game characters, there's much to emphasis from people who are trying to analyze games of thinking of it like other media, which, as shown by studies, does not work. So, for instance, I was listing off the shirt I have with the various video games with female characters. I don't think having female characters in video games automatically like endears you to them. Now that said, my favorite Assassin's Creed is still the one with the black female character. I think she's fucking gorgeous. I love her. She's so fun to play. She's badass. I love her storylines. I have no complaints at all about that game. If anything, my one issue is that Ubisoft was just like, yeah, but this is just like some one off random PS Vita game, and we're not going to tell anyone it exists. In fact, we're going to act like it doesn't exist because nobody wants to play, like, you know, a black female character in Assassin's Creed. And I was like, no, you should be advertising the shit out of this. You should be like, every time someone's like, oh man, where's the woman in Assassin's Creed? You should just hold this game up and be like, hello, come play. It's great. We love this game. But they don't because they kind of had the idea, which again, I think GamerGate was hoping to disprove, but we probably, I don't know, didn't. They had the idea that, yeah, the people who buy their video games are white cishet male and they're not that into, you know, representation, et cetera, et cetera. So, do I think it's important? Yes. Do I think it's the like a selling point? No. People aren't going to play the game because it's got a black female character. There's not enough black female characters who are people who are rich enough to be buying these games. What you need to do is focus on the gameplay. I like it because on the PS Vita, it's smooth. Now, I haven't played the PC port. I should get around to it and try it out, review it, whatever. But it's really smooth action, and I actually liked the action for it probably better than any, except as with everybody else, I loved the ship combat in 4, Assassin's Creed 4.
Okay.
So